Hey everyone, very exciting. We have a special Q&A episode coming up. You can send your voice memo, maybe you'll hear your recording on the podcast, or an email to mailbag@andrewyang.com, and we will do our best to answer your question and have it on the show. This week on Forward.
Over 65% of our alumni are still in the field of entrepreneurship. So when you think about the importance of what entrepreneurship does, there are also aspects of the whole ecosystem. How do you feed into that? And so now we have, not only do we have alumni who are starting companies and leading companies, but we have alumni who are partners at venture capital firms, who are launching accelerator programs. We really have seen that VFA has been this entrepreneurial career accelerator.
It is my pleasure to welcome to the podcast the brand new CEO of Venture for America, Carrie Murphy. Welcome, Carrie.
Thank you, Andrew. It's weird hearing that when I'm talking to the founder of Venture for America, but I appreciate the welcome and it's great to be here.
Yeah, we're going to dig into all things VFA and all things Carrie, but I want to go on an extended soliloquy to let people know what the heck Venture for America is, the founding of it, how you came to it. Well, we're going to go into the whole thing, but Venture for America, for people who don't know, is an extraordinarily wholesome 501c3 started by yours truly in 2011. And this was my thinking at the time, which I wrote up in this book, Smart People Should Build Things, published in 2014. And I got to say, Carrie, people all the time come to me and say that they loved my first book, The War on Normal People. And I was like, I actually wrote a book before that, but it's totally fine. So I want to set the stage. It's 2011, and I think that the main thing that ails America, there are a lot of things even then, but the main thing that ails America is that we had so many talented, enterprising young people that thought that they needed to go to Wall Street, finance, management consulting, law school like I did, or big tech in order to have a fruitful, fulfilling professional career. And I thought, you know what? They should instead head to Detroit, New Orleans, Birmingham, St. Louis, Baltimore, Cleveland, where you are right now, and cities like that to work in startups and early stage companies, help grow them, create some jobs, and then if they want to, maybe even start a company afterwards. So this was the very, very idealistic, patriotic entrepreneurship fellowship program for enterprising young people who wanted to make a difference and learn how to be an entrepreneur. So that was 2011. Where were you 2011? I'm going to date this a little bit.
I was just going to ask you, that's my one gripe, is I wish you had started this a little bit earlier so that I could have participated. 2011, I had started my first job at a tech company, theladders.com in New York. So I had just graduated college the year prior, coming out of the financial kind of crisis at that moment, was looking for a job and looking everywhere, consulting, large corporates, thinking about Teach for America, like, what do I do? And I wound up in probably at the time, like a Series C tech company, and moving to New York and working there.
Wow. So yeah, you were living a version of this. So start the org in 2011, bring together this really, really incredible young team. And then we have our first class in 2012. We grow. There is a documentary made about us in 2016 called Generation Startup. If someone wants a 98-minute kind of look through the eyes of 5 idealistic young people who moved to Detroit, which is the site of VFA's training camp and a place I spent a lot of time during those years. So I ran Venture for America from 2011 to 2017. And during that time, I saw a lot of the country. Now, people who are fans of mine know that during those years, I came to this tough conclusion that we were automating away many, many jobs, and we'd done just that to about 4 million manufacturing jobs that were primarily based in Michigan, Ohio, where you are, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and that was having effects on our national politics, and that my friends in Silicon Valley were going to do the same thing to retail jobs and call center jobs and fast food jobs and eventually trucking jobs and on and on. So then that drove me into the public sector. But this is not that conversation. This is about the wholesomeness of venture for America. So VFA, we run fellowship classes and have some awesome young people who come through, some of whom started really successful companies. And I'm going to say, when people ask me, oh, what companies, the one that comes to mind for me is Banza, the chickpea pasta company. I don't know. I mean, there have been companies that have now come out of VFA that I have no idea about, which is one thing I'd love to pick your brain about. But for folks who go to grocery stores and see Banza, you might know what I'm talking about. But it was a healthy pasta company started by Brian Rudolph and a couple of other people in Detroit, circa 2012, 2013. So their journey is documented in part in that Generation Startup movie. How well have you gotten to know the Banza guys?
Yeah, so I got to see Brian actually not too long ago in New York. I think it was back in March. So he's got a large office space and facility there. So gotten to know them over the years, both previously in my roles on the team and then now sitting as the CEO. And actually, fun. I don't know if you saw this, but Banza was just listed as one of Time's 100 most influential companies in 2024, which is really exciting for them.
Yay, Banza. Yay, Brian and the team. And I have to say that it was some of the most invigorating, uplifting stuff in my life was seeing various young people take on what's a really, really difficult challenge, which is either joining a startup or in some cases forming one themselves. I mean, it's not for the faint of heart. There's a lot of adversity and failure baked in, honestly. And so we were recruiting people who have like a high resilience level, high grit. So I had incredible experiences mentoring the various fellows. And so you were working at Ladders around the time I was starting VFA, but you came to VFA a number of years ago, trying to help our operations, I want to say in the Midwest.
Yeah, so I can actually tell you my story of how I got exposed to VFA. So I started my career in New York City, either working for or building out teams for predominantly venture-backed growth tech companies. So spent some time at the Ladder, spent some time at Diversa Partners, and then I grew up and am from Cleveland. So I really wanted to, at some point, my husband and I just felt like we wanted to go back home. I wanted to be part of Cleveland's growth story. I had been in the startup world, the tech scene, and I was like, I don't even know if Cleveland has a startup tech scene. Like I hadn't heard much about it, which is where I did a little pivot, and I ended up following a former manager and went to Goldman Sachs for a bit. Learned quickly that wasn't, at this type of environment that I really thrived and wanted to do well in, but it helped give me a leg up for moving to Cleveland, having that, name on there. But I ended up going to I found a Series B startup company in Cleveland, and was then building out the team there. So doing talent acquisition, HR. We were probably around 60 employees at the time that I joined. And that's when I discovered VFA. So I don't know, Andrew, if you remember Joe Guy.
Of course, I remember Joe Guy.
Yeah. So I met Joe and I was like, I was like, I'm sorry, what? You're telling me that there's this incredible group of young professionals that have these like entrepreneurial mindset and skills and like just like the tenacity and they could come work at my startup in Cleveland, like sign me up. So I actually did my first foray in 2016. I went to the selection day in Cincinnati. You were there, you kicked it off. Was judged one of the selection days, and I was just blown away. The experience was unlike anything I had ever been a part of. And as someone who also has spent so much time just like evaluating talent, it was a really fascinating way to see in action how people respond and to just like collaborating and problem solving. The judges that were in the room with me were also an incredible group of people, which I think just gave VFA this added level of respect and credibility. And many of those individuals, like Robert Hatta, for example, I've stayed in touch with for like a long time now. Someone in that room ended up becoming one of our program managers as like one of our longtime standing funders. So all that to be said, I was committed. I was like, I'm going to hire a fellow. That was my job. And so I was unsuccessful hiring in 2016, ended up hiring a fellow in 2017. And then it was actually when Joe left the team and y'all were looking for a director to lead kind of the state of Ohio. I was like, man, that position sounds really interesting. I admire the organization, the work, but I had only been at my startup for a year and I was pretty committed to helping them build what they were doing. So just the timing didn't make sense. Fast forward 2 years later, VFA is looking for a director in Cleveland. And I just had this feeling that I needed to like pursue and understand what this could be, because there was so much about what VFA does around creating the opportunity for young individuals to pursue an entrepreneurial career, creating the opportunity for business leaders in places like Cleveland to have access to like much needed and impactful talent to help them pursue their mission and what they're trying to do. And just also having, that what the impact can be in high opportunity markets like Cleveland. So I applied, I got the job, and I've been on the team ever since. So it will be 6 years in October of being on the team. So we kind of missed each other in that regard, but have served in a variety of different capacities on the team since then.
Hey YouTube, thanks for watching. Please do hit like and subscribe and hit that bell if you want to be notified every time a new episode drops. Probably on Mondays, but hit that bell, and thank you. Wow, so Carrie, I really want to download from you what the heck I missed over the last 5.5 years, because I left in 2017 to run for president, and in 2018 I declared, and I didn't have that much interaction with the VFA during that period, in part because VFA is a C3, and it wasn't meant to be terribly political. I will say one of the joys of my campaign was traveling to Michigan and Ohio and even Alabama, strangely enough. I'm heading there this month, actually. Alabama, that is. And running into entrepreneurs who had worked with VFA and been like, hey, like, love you guys. Like that was extraordinarily heartwarming. It was like nice to know. And one of the jokes I used to tell to people, no one laughed, but whatever, is that I could prove that I had no designs on running for president when I was running VFA, because we never launched in Iowa or New Hampshire, which would have been very natural things to do if I had been a little frankly, more
strategic about that,
or even just politically ambitious, because I really wasn't. I mean, for me, I got activated after Trump won and then said, oh my gosh, what the heck is going on? I thought I had a sense of it that others didn't. The sense that I'm sure you share, because, you've now lived in Cleveland for any number of years. So what have I missed over I'm sure there are all sorts of amazing fellows and companies and stories from this last number of years.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really interesting couple of years, and I think there's a lot, as I reflect on what we've done and where we're going. Being that we are an entrepreneurial fellowship program, I think there's an aspect of us also being able to be nimble and adjust to like what's happening in the market. So when you think about it, what is still the same, the transformative impact and the importance of entrepreneurship has not gone away.
Yeah.
But when we think about it and what's kind of ebbed and flowed, there is a world in which the markets where we first went to, and you can, let's call it the like smart people should build thing phase. You had in the cities that were in really well capitalized startups, you have people, there's more of this, like, let's get people to these cities that need the support. And there's the brain drain and the things that you're suffering for, or that they're suffering from. But then over time, what has happened, one, entrepreneurship education, to your earlier point, has become a lot more prevalent at the university level. So there's a lot more what used to maybe be a major. Now there are whole departments around teaching entrepreneurship and helping more people pursue that as a path.
Yeah, I just want to put a caveat in there for a second, Karen.
Yeah.
This is one of the things that when I was leaving Venture for America, I wrote a blog post about or something. Which is that the number of entrepreneurship programs on college campuses has gone straight up. And then the rate of business formation among young people has either stayed flat or gone down. And that if anything, there's a negative correlation. And so I used to joke that if you were a really good entrepreneurship program on the college campus, you would just go in on day one and say, everyone here gets an F, and then see who comes back for day two, because it's only the folks that would accept an F that probably would and then might start something. So that was one thing that like I had observed. Though you're obviously right that the number of programs on college campuses has shot up. And when people ask me why did I think that the rates of business formation have gone down, I used to say things like, look, the level of indebtedness coming out of college has gone up. So, like if you ask someone to start a business and they owe 50, 80,000 or whatever it is, then it's kind of hard,
Absolutely.
And I will say one of the things about entrepreneurship programs too, is that they make some people think that there are, a multitude of steps in starting a business. Like the most basic one being, it's like, hey, you need a business plan, or something along those lines. And then if you take entrepreneurs from a generation ago, they'd be like, I didn't have much of a plan. I just went and started selling, these shirts, if it was Under Armour or whatever it is. So that was just one major thing that I'd found about college programs. The college programs I like are the college programs where they force you to work on an actual business or in an actual company, and or there's real money involved. Like if you take those two things out, then it becomes an abstraction, and then it may or may not prepare you. And that's one thing I loved about Venture for America, is that it's very, very real. Like it is your career. I mean, you get out there and it's like you got to work at the company and make it work. And then if you start your own business, then obviously there's real money involved.
Yeah, so one quick story, and then I'll get back to VFA. But that kind of reminds me, and where I didn't even realize that I'd find myself, in this entrepreneurial path. But I ended up being a public policy major at Syracuse University. When I went there, I had no idea what I wanted to study, and I went to the Maxwell 101 course that the dean taught, and he scared the living bejeebas out of me and was like, "This is going to be really hard. I'm going to grade you in these ways. You're going to have to go work at these real businesses." And that's what this major and program is built off of. And there was just something so different and refreshing about it that I came back the next day, and I learned so much practical skills there that I can then apply to my career. So I agree with you on that stance. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because despite the increase in the education, what we still know and believe in is true. The best way to learn entrepreneurship is by doing. You can only learn so much in a classroom. And so that's why there is still this really, really, valid need and opportunity for VFA to still be this path for this next generation of entrepreneurs to be able to actually go get some experience, go work alongside another founder and learn how to build something. Because we also, I think what is the average age of founders is probably more so in your 40s.
Yep.
And so there's something to be said of you could start something out of college, and a lot of our fellows do, and they absolutely can be successful. But there's also something to getting some experience. And from our perspective too, Entrepreneurship is not an easy journey. It's not a
No.
straight path. It's hard. And so what I think the benefit of VFA is that you are actually able to do it with a sense of community, and you have access to this
A
network.
thousand percent, like the fellows become a huge part of each other's lives and push each other to get better. I mean, one of the things that happened with one of the early classes is that every week one person would be responsible for sending a life update. And
Mm.
so you'd get a life update from someone in the class every week, and it was a way
Oh, I
for
love
people to plug in and support each other. There have been any number of weddings that have
yes.
happened, some of which I've been invited to. One of the jokes I used to tell was, if you were a young person and you don't know what the heck you want to do, and you decide to go to law school, your parents will think it's a good idea, it's easy to find, and the government will give you $100,000 loan, no questions asked. Then if you
Yeah.
decide to start a company, then your parents will think it's a terrible idea. It's
Mhm.
very, very hard to find, and no one will give you a $100,000 loan. And so you wonder why we have this surplus of unhappy,
Yeah.
indebted lawyers, and a real deficit of folks who are grinding it out, building companies and creating jobs in communities.
Yeah.
Hey, all, if you know me, you know I'm not that handy in the kitchen, and I have become a huge believer and booster of Factor. Factor's delicious, ready to eat meals make eating a joy. It's so fast. You just pop that thing 2 minutes later, and you are eating a restaurant quality, healthy meal, making you feel excellent about yourself. My favorite is the turkey chili with zucchini, and there is so much more to choose from. You never get tired of it. It fits any budget. It's fast, healthy. It is going to be the new Factor in your life. Yes, I'm a fan. Head to factormeals.com/yang50 and use code yang50 to get 50% off your first box and 2 free wellness shots per box while subscription is active. That's code yang50 at factormeals.com/yang50 to get 50% off your first box. Get Factor today. It's going to change the way you eat.
So absolutely. So kind of going back to like your original question, what's happened over
Yeah.
the years? What have we seen? What's been the impact? So since our first cohort, as you started VFA in 2011, 2012 was our first cohort. Since then, we've had over 1,500 young professionals that have like
Wow.
launched entrepreneurial careers with VFA, which is super exciting. And really one thing too that has really grown and been a core part of how we think about the importance of our work and the importance of who we're recruiting and why that matters for the future of entrepreneurship is our fellows represent a really diverse group of backgrounds and experiences. So like our most recent cohort was 60% identify as BIPOC, 48% women. And so really trying to make sure that as we think about this next generation of builders and leaders, let's make sure that we're getting a diverse group of individuals with a range of experiences because we know how important that is to innovation. And as we think about just like overall like outcomes, looking back, we did our alumni survey last year. We really have seen that VFA has been this entrepreneurial career accelerator. So we have our 2000 class now. They're coming up on 10 years upon graduating from the fellowship program. And as we look at our entire alumni community, 10% of our alumni are actually serving in C-suite positions within the corporations, mostly startups still that they're in. Our VFA fellows are 4 times more likely to start a company than their peers. And 25% of our alumni have started over 375 ventures and have raised almost $1 billion in capital. And when we think about in general what our alumni are doing, when we look at it, over 65% of our alumni are still in the field of entrepreneurship. So when you think about the importance of what entrepreneurship does, there are also aspects of the whole ecosystem. How do you feed into that? And so now we have, not only do we have alumni who are starting companies and leading companies, but we have alumni who are partners at venture capital firms, who are launching accelerator programs, who have maybe decided to go back to law school, which I would say if anyone wants to go to like law school or get your MBA, go get 2 to 3 years of experience first and make sure it's what you want to do and it makes sense, and then go do it. And so I was talking to one of our alum who actually did his fellowship in Denver for a cannabis company. And he saw all the like challenges and hardships from a legal perspective, went back and got his law degree. Now he's able to help represent and support the startups in that industry. And he has the credibility because he's been there and built a startup. He like is clearly passionate about the work. And so it's really exciting to see what that happens. And then when you look at like our cities, the cities that we're in, now we recruit fellows from across the country. 41% of our alumni are still living in one of VFA's cities that we're in. So, I think about an example where, some of the alum in Cleveland, for an example, like they came from Connecticut, New York, California, had no reason to be in Cleveland. And now they are living in Cleveland, have bought homes, are growing families, building businesses, starting their second company. It's really, really cool and awesome to see. So just as like a quick snapshot of some of what has happened over the last couple of years. But I think the other thing I'd say too, there's a lot we've had to navigate, when you have COVID.
Oh my gosh, COVID, yeah.
Remember that? Like that was a thing. And still, I was just talking to a team member, unfortunately, who has COVID right now, and it's still not completely gone. But like having so much of VFA is about community. And we have our training camp program where we're in Detroit. We're bringing all of our fellows there for this in-person programming. That was at the time, that was 4 weeks. And we had to go virtual. I mean, COVID happened in March, training camp happens in July. We had to make that program virtual very, very quickly. And how do you keep over 150 people engaged 8 hours a day on a computer during a pandemic? Like really wild. So there's this aspect of like, we had to go virtual for a while. We weren't able to do the same like in-person community building and programming, which obviously has its, helps us innovate and think about things differently, and potentially also think about, access to programming in a different way and accessibility, but it also has an impact on the community and the experience. Plus COVID then also spurred this like shift in remote work. And so what's interesting too is we have one as a team, which is really great. So I know most of our team used to be based in New York, and now our team is fully dispersed, and every single team member is based in one of our VFA markets.
Wow.
Which is probably very different from when you were on the team, but it is cool. At one point, I had 10 colleagues in Cleveland. We're not at that number, but it's really cool to have that and to be able to have that be part of the story. But going back to remote work, the companies, so our fellows and how the program works is we recruit them from out of school, and then they get jobs, full-time jobs at startups and entrepreneurial organizations in our cities, almost think of it apprenticeship style, like go get that experience. Well, a lot of those companies have also shifted to remote work, and we are still a place-based fellowship. Like it is important to not only work at one of these companies, but to be part of that cohort experience in a city. So kind of navigating some of those things. And then obviously, in like this startup world market, the VC market, everything has been shook over the last, an influx in capital, probably with COVID. And then now there's a little bit of a market correction. So a lot that we've also had to just, how do we be nimble? How do we continue to make sure we're able to, serve our constituents and continue to focus on our impact?
Yeah, so I was thinking of some of the fellows I knew who moved to Cleveland. One was from DC, went to Yale, and then you might even, I'm not sure if he's still there because it's been a little bit, but he was there, 8 years after landing there.
Peter Spalding?
Yes, I am thinking about Peter Spalding.
Yeah, he's one of, so I actually just caught up with Peter. He recently welcomed his first kid into his family. So he's got a growing family right now. He is still at his company partner. He's still at Boxcast. Peter is now the CFO there. So really, really incredible journey.
This is exactly the kind of thing I was thinking about and imagining back in the day. This podcast is sponsored by Helix Sleep. I've always been a big mattress guy. I've thought, hey, if you're going to do something for 8 hours a day, you might as well do it right. And with Helix Sleep, you can get a mattress that is made just for you. I took the Helix Sleep quiz and I was matched with a Dawn mattress because I wanted something that felt firm and I sleep on my back. If that resembles you, maybe you'll wind up with the same mattress as me. But take the Helix Sleep Quiz, and you will be sent a personalized mattress that you can try risk-free for weeks on end. I know it would be weird to return a mattress. I have a friend who did it, but you're not going to want to return this one. It's going to become the mattress in the house. My kids love the Helix Sleep mattress the most, even though it was not made for them in mind. And if you don't want to take my word or my kids' word for it, Helix has been awarded the #1 mattress pick by GQ and Wired magazine. Helix is offering 20% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. Go to helixsleep.com/yang. That's helixsleep.com/yang. This is their best offer yet, and it won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts now. There was like a thesis, and other people have written the same. It's like, if you want to be an entrepreneur, there are some real pluses to be in a lower cost environment. Now, so here are some of the minuses. The minuses are that, like the VC is not as concentrated there. You might have a harder time accessing certain types of talent and certain types of clients. And so those are the drawbacks. But the pluses are that you have a much lower cost environment. To the extent that you do get talent, they tend to be more committed because they might live there. And frankly, if they live in a place like Silicon Valley, it's like, well, your company has a bad quarter, I can just go to that company. Whereas if you're in like a more normal place, then they might be like, yeah, it's like a quarter. Like, let me stay here. You have more time to figure things out. To the extent that there are resources there, they'll actually care about you. Like individuals in the market might care about you. In a place like New York, it's not like the leaders of New York are going to care about some random startup, but in in these other places, they might care. And so you can, so it's like a different building piece. But there are some real advantages, and cost is one. By the way, the cost advantage applies to your life too, because I live in New York, and it's a very expensive place. And a lot of people, after they have kids, they leave because it's like, hey, if I'm going to raise a family, like, why am I? Yeah, you're pointing to yourself, sure. And by the way, I think it's the right decision for a lot of families in particular. I have 2 children. I grew up in a house with a yard, and so you want a house with a yard for your kids, very naturally. Which would you rather be? No offense to anyone, like an unhappy, over-traveled management consultant in in a place like New York or some other high-cost city, or would you rather be like a builder, leader, someone that everyone sees as the future of the entire region in like a place like Detroit or Cleveland or Baltimore? And I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer, though I obviously think that, we have a massive surplus of unhappy kind of transactional consultant types, and like not enough of the long-term builder types.
Yeah. So to give you a couple of things on that, and I totally agree. And I think it's a great point as we think about, how we talk about VFA as a career path for our future fellows is like, hey, do you want to be a big fish in a little pond or a little fish in a big pond? It's kind of like thinking about it in that sense. But going back to Detroit too. So we have now there have been over 210 fellows that have actually like launched their careers in Detroit. We're almost at, who knows, maybe at this point it is 3, but we have I think it's just under 100 fellows and alumni that are still working in the Detroit ecosystem. So you have, and what's fascinating about Detroit, because I think there's so many incredible things that Detroit is doing. We actually have a lot of alumni who don't do their fellowship in Detroit, but because of what they hear happening or the community that's there, they're moving to Detroit. So that's, we've got people coming in and out of there. We've had 27 companies that have been started by Detroit fellows 16 of them still in operation. And of those Detroit fellow founded companies, over 70 jobs have been created.
I love how you have these facts to your fingertips, Carrie. It gives me a lot of joy. Here's a question I have for you.
Yeah.
So in my day, there was something called the Philly Formal.
Oh, yeah, it still exists.
So what happened was, for people who don't know what I'm talking about, they would rent a warehouse in Philadelphia and do like a class-wide semi-formal dance in Philadelphia some weekend, and everyone would road trip there from all over the country, and they would have a blast. And in my day, they used to invite me, and I would be like, I'm never going near that place because, like I don't want to see you guys, partying
Yeah.
up in that way. Like, I'm like your fuddy-duddy dad. But the Philly Formal still exists. Then everything is exactly as it should be, because it seemed like an incredibly joyous gathering.
Yeah, so Philly Formal still exists. We still, as team members, we let them do their thing. One of the things that we did this year was, since it is an opportunity that brings fellows across their class and alumni to Philly, they're now actually building out like a weekend of programming.
Sure.
So we helped do like a panel discussion and get some thought leaders in the space to talk about things. But that has now also replicated. So I don't know if these were around when you were there, but there's still Bamsgiving, there's the Baltimore wedding, there's the Cleveland pig roast. So now all the cities are kind of like have created their own gathering because they want to like get other fellows to be like, well, no, come see what's happening here. Like, this is a fun, cool place to be. So a lot of that still exists too.
Wow, I did not know about any of the competitive offerings, but it makes perfect sense, because I would resent it too if I was in another city and everyone
Yeah.
starts being like, why not just
Yeah.
have people here? And as a young person, it's so fun to just show up in a city and sleep on someone's sofa and yuck it out. I mean, there is something really magical and beautiful to what folks experienced. I'm so glad that spirit has persisted, though I had no doubt it would persist, just because young entrepreneurial types love to get together.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
This podcast is sponsored by ExpressVPN. How did you choose which internet service provider to use? The sad thing is, most of us didn't have much of a choice, because ISPs operate a lot like monopolies in the regions that they serve. They then use this monopoly position to take advantage of customers, and yes, they even sell your data, your activities to advertisers and big tech companies, and you don't see a dime. That's why I protect my internet surfing and devices with ExpressVPN. When you use ExpressVPN, it's like a magic portal to a perfectly safe and anonymous internet. And don't take my word for it. This is the #1 VPN service according to CNET. It's used by major companies all over the world. So stop handing over your personal data to ISPs and other tech companies who then mine your activity and sell off your information. Protect yourself with a VPN I trust to keep my privacy online. Visit expressvpn.com/yang. That's EXPRESS VPN.com/yang to get 3 extra months free. Go to expressvpn.com/yang right now to learn more. Wow. So things have grown. Some things have stayed the same. Some you've overcome a lot. I'm excited for you. So what happened with? So when I stepped down, one of my colleagues, Amy Nelson, became CEO, and then she left, and then there was a new CEO who came in approximately, I want to say, was that 2020 or so?
2021.
2021.
Yeah.
That's right. And then he has stepped down, and now you are stepping into the role. So congratulations. I dare say it's an incredibly important, high impact leadership role with like a capital L. I mean, you're like a real leader of a nonprofit org, yes, but of a community, an ecosystem, a culture. There are a lot of folks who benefit tremendously from VFA's work in cities around the country. and I know this in part because I used to get a lot of love everywhere I went in these places. They'd be like, "Oh wow, like I know this person, I know that person," but it's certainly a very big job. What are your plans and hopes and dreams for the new Carrie Murphy era of VFA?
Yeah, no, great question. And I don't take the role lightly by any means. Big shoes to fill, huge, incredible community to serve and support, and a mission to advance. So, it's definitely an honor. There's a couple things as I think about VFA moving forward. I want to make sure it is still absolutely vital that we are able to have more of the next generation of builders and leaders able to pursue an entrepreneurial career path. And so continuing to maintain VFA as this prestigious fellowship and hopefully one that people want to seek for the right reasons. I think there's an aspect too of like, you might start seeing messaging around like the anti-sell. Like, are you sure you want to do this? Because this is going to be hard. But if you want to do it, great. And so continuing to do that, and really, how do we make sure that we are providing a really strong experience and community and the resources that these fellows need for them to be able to have an impact both at the companies that they're working at and the cities and communities where they're moving to and living in, but then also setting them up for future success. So we now have probably in your time where maybe some like, hey, let's run this program, let's try this, let's see how these things happen. We've now kind of outlined a programmatic roadmap that mirrors the baseline founder journey. So our hope as we continue to move forward is whether you are a fellow or an alum of our program, we have a programmatic roadmap so that we can help you take an idea and start to go from 0 to 1. And so how do we continue to hone in on that? And then if we get like future vision kind of forward looking, some of the things that I'm starting to think about too is like, what does long-term sustainability look like for us as a nonprofit organization? And a huge component of that, in my opinion, is around our ability to mobilize and activate our alumni community.
Yeah.
We will continue to have this fellowship program and have that maintain like it's what it is. And that's essentially like the pipeline of these future entrepreneurs and leaders. But then how do we actually mobilize that community to continue to deepen our impact? And so these are some ideas. This is not, this is forward looking, but I've been having some conversations with individuals where I think when you look at our alumni, who they are, what they've done, what they're motivated and driven by, we can not only provide a really high quality access of like pipeline to really strong talent for venture capitalists or people that are looking for those future founders, but you think about the alumni who have seen high growth and scale. Okay, so do you need those operators to plug them back into someone within your portfolio company? How do we help connect so that when they have their first exit, let's get them ready for the second one so they can continue to have that impact. There's also, an interesting, when you think about like entrepreneurship through acquisition, we have a bunch of boomers that are, retiring and businesses that are looking where there's just in Cleveland alone, I think there's like 10,000 manufacturing businesses and only 8% have a succession plan in place.
Wow, it's true. A lot of those are family businesses, and the kids don't want to do it.
Yeah. And so there's just an interesting component of like, well, is there a world in which do we actually have a network of operators who could go and build and continue growing those businesses that have deep impacts in their community? So just some like early ideas of, and like, there's things that we're also really good at as an organization. And so how do we open up and provide more resources and tools to this next group of entrepreneurs and the communities that we're serving? So those are all things that we're thinking about for forward facing. The big thing too is, we have such a special community. And so really to making sure that we're able to continue, providing for them and creating that sense of community and opportunity for everyone moving forward.
Well, congratulations, Carrie. It's an awesome role. I will say it's a little bit like being the head of a vibrant family that happens to be based in cities around the country. If someone wants to get involved with VFA, whether it's as a company partner, funder, someone who wants to launch their career, how can they best get in touch or find out more?
Yeah, great question. So one, anyone can always reach out to me directly, whether that's on LinkedIn or through my email, carrie@ventureforamerica.org. You can always go to our website. So if you're a fellow, you can learn, or if you want to become a fellow, you can learn more information about what the application process and timeline looks like. If you're a company, and so we didn't even get to talk about this, Andrew, but if you are a growing business, you're looking for entrepreneurial talent, if you're in one of our 13 markets, would love to talk to you. You can go to our website. We can get you connected with talent to help grow your team. We're also launching an alumni job board. So regardless of location, if you're looking for more like mid and senior level talent, there's an opportunity to have access to that network that way. But our website's the best place to go, and you can reach out directly to our team. And I think the email is companies@ventureforamerica.org. The other thing I'd say is we've launched our own podcast. So VFA Pulse is now up. You can find it on Spotify. And it's a great way to hear the stories of our founders, the leaders in the communities that we're serving. And so an awesome opportunity to just hopefully be inspired. And if others want to, we're always looking in our cities. We have regional boards. If people want to get engaged and support our fellows locally, we still do selection days where we're looking for judges to help with this, the evaluation process. So there's so many different ways that people can get plugged into our work. And so that's where I would encourage. And I even think, one of our alum in Detroit, Arabia, is launching. She has her launch party for POGO, Politics on the Go, that's happening today in the city. You can hear her podcast. So there's just great ways to kind of get involved and hear about what's happening.
It's an amazing group of people. Congratulations again, Carrie. Carrie@ventureforamerica.org to find out more. I would especially urge, if you are a manager at a company and you need someone incredible, imagine the most talented, gritty, resilient, enterprising young person you've ever met. And then it's that person generally with a couple of pluses on top of it, because folks, when they meet VFAers, are just like, I had no idea these people even existed. Carrie Murphy, the new CEO of Venture for America, congratulations. And we'll have you back on just to see how the new era is unfolding. But congrats again, and appreciate the heck out of Team VFA. It's near and dear to my heart.
Thank you so much for having Andrew. This has been a pleasure, and I would love to come back and share more about all that's been happening.